Okay. So thank you for that. And also, yeah, thank you all for your flexibility today, as was sent out in the email. It was Sojong, and the bi-monthly confession ceremony, or bi-weekly, right? Bi-weekly, twice a month. So, and it said that even the arhats, people who have attained nirvana, they don't have an exemption from going to Sojong. So of course, me, no question. Okay. Anyway, just trying to. So as I open up the file here, let's just adjust our motivation in a brief way. Thinking that the purpose of my life is to benefit all sentient beings, and in order that I may be able to benefit sentient beings in the most effective way, I must first achieve the state of enlightenment, because then and only then will I have all the skills, qualities, knowledge to guide sentient beings most effectively from the oceans of samsaric suffering to the state of enlightenment. And therefore, I need to learn about all the various stages of training. And therefore, I'm going to take part in this Dharma lecture here today. Okay. And then we can start in the usual way, taking refuge in generating bodhicitta, this formulation before the teachings. So again, can't emphasize this enough, but you'll see this prayer at the beginning of so many practice texts, and we do it at the beginning of all the teachings. So it can become very easy just to go on autopilot. Yeah, take refuge, till enlightened, whatever, But the point of taking refuge isn't just reciting these words, but actually generating the mind reflected in this verse, right? So I take refuge in time enlightened. So we haven't gone over the refuge module yet, but those of you probably have studied Lama well enough to know they talk about two causes of refuge, fear or fear of either lower realms or suffering of samsara, or conjoined with bodhicitta, to fear not being a Buddha, basically. And then faith in the three jewels, having the ability to protect you from those fears. And then what do? Well, then you have to take refuge, means to wholeheartedly commit yourself to training in the Dharma, the path that the Buddha taught. So that's the essence of taking refuge, and then this generating bodhicitta to direct all one's actions, and here the merits of listening to Dharma. But the point is directing all of our actions towards this goal of becoming a Buddha, so we can benefit transmigratory beings. Okay. So with that, I take refuge until I'm enlightened, the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. Okay. So, all right, let's go to reading view. All right, So, session 2, Samsara Nirvana. Today, I like doing this a little further motivational quotation. So here, the Katha Geshe Potala has said, for as long as we have wandered through cyclic existence in the past, it is not stopped by itself. So, by the way, what does that mean? Wandered in cyclic existence in the past. So how long has that been? Beginningless samsara, right? Why? Because, the mind is beginningless. Why? Because every moment of mind necessarily needs a preceding moment of mind for its, substantial continuum, right? This is the basic premise and sort of proof of past lives, right? Okay, so since we have a mind now, that mind has to have, come from a previous moment of mind and so on, right? So then extending back through beginningless time. Beginningless time, actually then, beginningless samsara, right? Beginningless time, beginningless mind, beginningless samsara, okay? All right, so from all this beginningless time until now, the cyclic existence has not stopped by itself, okay? It's not like, oh, we don't have one here, but, the butter lamp, right? Even you go to the Tibetan monastery, the butter lamps, instead of oil, they use butter, right? So here in Seta, they have a huge one. It can burn for, many days, but even how big it is, eventually, all you have to do, you light it, okay, either the wind will come and blow it out, but that's why they put it in these, cases, glass cases. So even protecting it with a glass case, eventually the butter will exhaust and it will stop by itself, okay? So our cyclic existence isn't like that. It's like a big butter lamp that's like, okay, or, here in India, we have the pay as you go on the mobile, right? So it's not like our balance runs out, right? We only have, a little bit of balance left on our cyclic existence, and then, they're going to cut off our plan. It's not like that. It hasn't stopped. Okay. So given that, it will not stop by itself now either. Means in the future, it's not going to stop by itself. So what do we have to do? We must put a stop to it. And the time to do so is today, when we have attained leisure and opportunity, right? So now, when we think putting a stop to samsara, then we have to get rid of the causes of samsara, karma, and the afflictions. Of those, the primary one is the afflictions. And how do we put a stop to the afflictions? We have to recognize that the root affliction, grasping to the true existence of all phenomena, is an incorrect view, is a distorted view of reality. We do that by generating the wisdom realizing emptiness, which is, in direct opposition to the ignorant mind grasping to true existence. You know this from your last module with Venerable Lexop, right? So then, since we have to generate that wisdom, very difficult. But now, this leisure and opportunity, essentially, it's the leisure and opportunity to study about emptiness, realize emptiness, right? Who else can do that? We talked about all those 18 qualities, so many non-human states, so many states not having access to the teachings of Buddha. So now, this is our best opportunity to put a stop to samsara. If you don't do it now, as Shantideva says, right? Then when will we get such an opportunity again in the future? Very difficult. Okay. So little extra urgency. And this is, by the way, just how like a medium scope practitioner would think. Then, of course, we who claim to be aspiring Mahayana practitioners, then to think, okay, not only is it, you know, my responsibility to put an end to my own samsara, but all the other sentient beings, you know, drowning in the ocean of samsara, and so many of them don't have the leisure and opportunity that I have. So now, wow, they're waiting on you, as it were, to become enlightened. So you can then help them, right? All the Buddhas of the past, you know, they haven't done it. All these sentient beings we still see. All the Buddhas of the past, so many Buddhas have come, they didn't liberate these sentient beings. Now, you have a connection with them. You see them, right? That dog on the street. Oh, sorry, many of you in the West, there's no street dogs. Here in Sera, there's so many street dogs. You just want to walking back from Sojong, you know, past many. Anyway, I always try to make a connection with these street dogs, even reciting a little mantra for them, with the thought that, you know, I'm giving them a little dharma now. And then later, when I become enlightened, then, you know, hopefully they can be in my retinue and I can give them more extensive dharma teachings. So anyway, like that, then these dogs, yeah, that I passed on my way home, when I become enlightened, I'll liberate them, really. But maybe until then, they're just going to be, you know, suffering. Okay, so extra urgency. Even if, you know, what they say, I think Nagarjuna says, yeah. So even the full-fledged middle school practitioners, they practice, they make effort, right? As if their hair was on fire. Okay, so you can imagine your hair or your clothing catches on fire. Just, oh gosh, oh, I have to, you know, put it out right away, you know. So similarly, okay, and that's just what the beings working for their own liberation from samsara. That's the kind of effort and urgency and immediacy they put into it. So then you can imagine someone now doing it for all sentient beings, countless, numberless sentient beings. No question. Okay, anyway, more about that when we get to the bodhicitta module. Okay, so anyway, yeah, actually, I wanted to just review a little bit. So this is what we covered last time, and then, you know, we always start with this overview, right? Remember, I was mentioning this is the list. Did you go over this list and you think about your own kind of more logical way of framing it? This is what I thought, and this largely follows, in my opinion, the outlines in the Lamrim Chenmo. So yeah, I feel very comfortable, you know, me and Lama Tsongkhapa. Right? It's nice. So then, yeah, where we are overall in the Lamrim outlines, we're here in the medium scope. Yeah, we all know that. Then we were talking, okay, these beings in medium capacity, their motivation is to gain liberation from all of samsaric existence by abandoning its causes, karma, afflictions. Okay, great. Then we talked a bit about hopefully reviewing this person of medium capacity, their definition. And then we talked about, you know, this phrase point of view, right? So hopefully you reviewed that and have a good understanding. before I add more doubts and debates, we're going to cover some new material. But yeah, that's what we talked about. And then we talked about these different outlines, liberation of the palm of your hand, as well as Namrim Chenmo. I said, actually, for the syllabus that we're going to cover, right, these, I think the Namrim Chenmo is going to be better than even liberation of the palm of your hand. Why? Because in our syllabus, we have these 3, 6, and 8 sufferings. And I mentioned the liberation of the palm of your hand only has the 8, right? The 6, 8. And then Lamrim Chenmo has all 3 different types of suffering. Sorry, the 3 modes of reflecting on the 8, 6, and 3. And so that's better. Then, yeah, just to set the context again, right? Here, mind yearning for liberation in other contexts is translated as the mind of renunciation. But, we were saying in Tibetan, what is that? Ne jung, ne definite. Jung is to emerge. So emerging from what? Samsara. So therefore, it's the mind that thinks, oh, definitely, whatever it takes, I have to get out of this psychic existence. Okay? This desire to obtain freedom from samsara. That's the mind intent on liberation. And then why? Well, very nice quotation here from Lama Tsongkhapa. Without this mind of renunciation, there's no way to pacify attachment, seeking pleasurable effects in samsara, ocean of circling. And then this craving itself is what binds us. So for those 2 reasons, at the beginning, we seek renunciation. Okay. So then, yeah, we talked about more things, and then we ended up with the 4 Noble Truths, and then talked about the order, why they're taught in this way, the significance of doing that. And we had this very nice quotation from Maitreya that you'll see. Yeah, in probably all the texts I can remember, this is gonna that talks about 4 Noble Truths. You're gonna see this, or a lot of them. It's very, very nice. Okay, so that's all review, setting the context. Now, what do we have to do? Actually, this is the debate that's going to come later. So now where we are is, we're going to think about these general sufferings of samsara, 6 types of suffering, 8 types of suffering, 3. Okay, so that's what we're going to cover today. And then after I go through that, I'm going to get to this doubt that I thought when I prepared this PowerPoint, I put at the beginning, and then actually before the sojong, before the confession ceremony, there's a puja. So during that, I was just, thinking, oh, you know what, maybe cover the material before I introduce more doubts. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. All right, so thinking about the general sufferings of samsara, so this is the 6, and this is the translation that's used in Liberation of the Palm of Your Hand. They talk about the bane of uncertainty. Anyway, I don't know, the rest of you native English speakers, the only thing I hear, I only hear the bane of my existence outside of Dharma context. Is that right? Otherwise, there's no banes. But here we have 6 banes, 6 banes. Anyway, it's a good word. It's a good word. All right. see, after Sojong and purified all my broken vows, then such joy, right? Oh, I'm now pure for a few minutes at least. So anyway. Okay, so the bane of uncertainty. So here, okay, and just to recall, right? We talk about general sufferings of samsara, right? General, and then in the outlines we had the general and specific. So general means across all the different forms of existence, right? In the desire realm, form realm, formless realm. These are part and parcel of being in samsara. That's why it's called the general sufferings of samsara. Okay. So when we talk about the bane of uncertainty, this just means that the things that we normally, consider to be sources of happiness, right? They are uncertain, constantly changing, right? So the story that is given again and again is this this story of Shariputra going to a house, and then he says he sees this family, and since Shariputra had clairvoyance, he could see in the past life they had been in different relationships than they are now, right? Right now there's a father, a mother, a son, and a dog, right? And anyway, yeah, I'll read it. And here there's another translation of liberation in the palm of your hand, liberation in our hands, right? And yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, those of you who have access to different translations, different materials, it is interesting. It's fruitful. So by the way, that both Lexok and I, we both majored in philosophy in university. You know that, right? Okay. Yeah. So I remember Lexok, he did his, I don't know, it's like we had a senior thesis, and I think, yeah, Lexok also had a kind of, a major paper. I don't know if it was a thesis, whatever they called it, whatever they merely labeled it. But he did his on Plato. And I remember his thesis advisor or whatever professor was just astonished and like kind of scolded him because Lexok only consulted one translation. I was like, what? You did this paper and you only looked at one translation of Plato? What are you, crazy? So, sometimes even the same text, you look at different translations. And then it's very interesting. You see, if you see major differences, then that should send off a little, this is strange. What's going on here? And then in doing that, you can come to maybe discover some things. Like, I think a few times already in the Wisdom Publications translation of Liberation of the Palm of Your Hand, I have cited a few poems, right? So anyway, that's not to criticize the translator, but it's to sort of and forget about the translation. Anytime when we're reading, even if the translation is good or perfect, even if you study Tibetan later and you're studying Tibetan, those things that make you pause. You're reading, remember, we're not reading like a Harry Potter novel, right? We're reading to become omniscient Buddhas. So then we read and it's like, there's a passage and it's like, either something surprising, right? Something goes against maybe something you've read in another text, or it's just like, what does that mean? That's surprising. Then you make a note of that, right? And then you want to dive deeper, right? You want to increase your knowledge. Okay, anyway. So that in part is why I'm using this text. I'm just going to read this passage because this story is it comes up also again and again. Okay, so there is an elderly householder who regularly ate fish from a pond beyond his house. Sorry, so if you're following in your translation, it's the Bane of Uncertainty, right? When he died, he was reborn as a fish in that very pond. Because his wife was so attached to her family, she was reborn as a dog in the same household. The family son, meanwhile, killed another man for committing adultery with his wife. Because of his lust for the son's wife, the enemy was reborn as her son. Sometime later, the son caught and killed the fish that his father had become. While the son was eating its flesh, his mother, the dog, was gnawing on the leftover bones. So the son began to beat the dog. At the same time, the son was holding in his lap the child that had formerly been his enemy. Upon witnessing this scene, Shariputra declared, eating his father's flesh, a son beats his mother and holds in his lap the enemy that he killed. Likewise, a wife gnaws on her husband's bones. These circumstances of samsara are laughable. So anyway, the point is, since there's all this uncertainty and impermanence in samsara, things are in constant flux, then even the ones who are our friends can become enemies, our enemies can become friends, and so forth. So what is this? How does this help us gain that mind yearning for liberation, right? Well, the point is, see, if we had things we could rely on that were going to be stable, a stable source of happiness or goodness within samsara, then we could sort of put all our eggs in that basket and kind of rely on that and say, okay, well, at least I'm going to, always have this friend, this rock, right? But it's not like that, right? There's nothing we can hang our hopes on in samsara. Therefore, no alternative. We have to get out. We need to, emerge. We need liberation. Okay. Yeah. So actually here in Liberation of Pamir, there's a few nice stories too. But later, I think you can hear the birds quite loud, right? It's nice. I'll go recite mantras for them later. Anyway, oh yeah. So as I was saying, we're talking about the wisdoms, the three types of wisdom: wisdom from hearing, wisdom from contemplation, wisdom from meditation, right? So now right? You all have the wisdom arising from hearing about the bane of uncertainty. And what that means, all these things in flux. So now contemplation, you have to think, and it's really tasty to make it very personal to you. Okay. So here, there's a story from Shariputra. So now in your life, what kind of uncertainty, right, has there been, right? So you can think the same way. Those, failed romantic relationships, that gives me a lot of food for thought. But whatever it is, right? Those ones that were, once sources of pleasure, or your best friend from whenever in going to school or college, and then you had a falling out, and now you're not even in touch anymore. So whatever is personal and makes it kind of real for you. So you're like, oh yes, I know what Tsongkhapa is talking about. Yeah, oh man, like that. Then later, when we come to meditate, then you use those things and get the visceral experience, right? where you have that, oh yeah, you know, when I was with that person, we said we'd be best friends forever, you know, BFF. And now we're totally had that falling out. Oh yeah. You know, like that. Those little, oh yeah, right? You hear me? Oh yeah. That little change in the mind. That's what you're looking for. Okay. All right. So next, the bane of being dissatisfied. Okay. So here, there's some nice analogies that Nagarjuna says, you know, in the letter to a friend, you know, where it is about, you know, we've drunk so much milk and it was more than the ocean. If we heaped up our, all the ocean that we've drank, it would, you know, not, the great ocean couldn't even, you know, be a container for it. But yet we still want more, right? So anyway, again, now we can think in our own life, right? So whatever it may be, never satisfied, whether it's wealth, whether it is, you know, property, whether it's, you know, the number of followers we have on Instagram, whatever it is, right? We're always wanting more. It's never that it's like, okay, I'm good, right? Even something like, okay, maybe we're not hoarders, right? Maybe, but even something like, you know, eating food, right? I'm a bit of a foodie, I must admit. I remember my best meal that I've ever had. And it says it in the text, right? So even the best meal you had, a few hours later, you're hungry again. And as Zamazo Rinpoche likes to say, maybe a few hours after that, I don't know how he explains it in a quite poetic way, but you can see the food. You can see its substantial continuum a few hours later, right? And then, you know, not so attractive as it was on that nice plate, right? So, yeah, no satisfaction, you know. Even we, you know, get the things we like, even the things we desire, then it doesn't bring us the satisfaction we seek. Okay, next. See, these birds, I think they're trying to attract a mate, right? All these bird calls, right? They just want a companion. But little do they know, even they do all this, you know, cawing, trying to attract someone, still won't be satisfied. Okay. So next, the bane of repeatedly leaving bodies. And here, yeah, Nagarjuna talks about the heap of bones from all the, you know, rebirths we've taken. That heap of bones, if we, you know, kind of collect all the skeletons we've had since beginningless samsaric rebirth, it would be higher than Mount Meru, right? And wow, I just looked at my watch. Yeah, we're gonna stop in 55 minutes. I know some of you are on the east coast of US. It's getting late for you, so yeah, I got you. I have you in mind. Then, yeah, the bane of being conceived and born over and over again, right? It's quite related to repeatedly leaving bodies, right? And then moving from high to low over and over again. This we see. So, you know, someone even in a high position, you know, there's some scandal and yeah, they're ousted from their position of power. I used to be a tennis fan, so some of you might know Boris Becker. You know Boris Becker, right? Great, Wimbledon, champion, great tennis player. So then many of you, I don't know if you know, but he had this tax evasion, scandal, and now he's in jail. You know that? Yes, Mary Ellen. Oh, I follow these things so I can meditate on Lamrim. He once was my kind of favorite tennis player, and now he's in jail. So yeah, he accumulated all these debts. So yeah, bane of being dissatisfied. He was married, dissatisfied, had an affair. So then the first wife found out, had a big divorce, cost him millions of pounds. And then in the affair, they had a child. So then he had to pay also millions of pounds in child support. So then, racked up all these debts, couldn't pay them off. So then from the bane of being dissatisfied, then did all these other things, not quite in keeping with the law, to try to maintain a quite high lifestyle, and then had the bane of moving from high to low. Now is in jail. So it's like that. Then last, bane of having no companions. So this again, we have companions maybe in this life, but the point is here, from life to life, we're born alone, we die and move on to the next life alone. Okay. So this is not then to say that, in this life, we're trying to form a little Dharma family ourselves. I hope we're doing that. And so we can mutually support each other, right? I hope we do. But this is more talking about, it's not that we have no companions full stop, but a companion that, always follows with us, life to life, that we don't have. Okay. Then, so I wanted to say this, because then in another context, this doubt came up, right? Why do we have to keep talking about suffering, And especially sometimes in the beginner courses, then, people think, Buddhism so pessimistic, always talking about suffering. You have 8 types of suffering, 6 types of suffering, 3 types of suffering. Well, even this, we talked about, and this is what we talked about last time, the purpose of meditating on suffering is so we generate this mind wishing for liberation. Okay. So it could be the case, hey, just like we saw in the Buddha's time, when he gave the teachings on the Four Noble Truths, some of those first disciples, they became Arya beings in the first kind of stanza, the first paragraph of that sutra. Some became arhats, right? So it could be due to, extremely great imprints and past karma from your past lives. It could be the case that, during your first lecture on the faults of samsara, you can generate the mind of renunciation. If you fall into that camp, then, tashile, good for you, I rejoice. But most of us, we're not. We hear these things, but what's going to happen later? We heard about the suffering of dissatisfaction, and then at lunch, what's going to happen? Eat the first bite. Oh man, yeah. Pass the chili sauce. Oh, it needs this, it needs that, So anyway, because we haven't had that real transformation yet, then we're going to keep beating you again and again with the suffering, right? He talks about, the early Kopan courses, right? Early Kopan courses, then he and Lama Yeshe would kind of team teach them, right? But Lama Zopa Rinpoche said his job was, in the beginning, right? So suffering of lower realms, death and impermanence, he was doing all the small scope meditations. And he said, yeah, so many people in those early courses, they just left. Because, for like 2 weeks, he would just be like, going in quite detail about, all this suffering of lower realms and impermanence and death. But then after 2 weeks, right, those who could persevere through all that, then Lama Yeshe would come, right? And he's talking about bodhicitta. So he just keeps saying like, oh, how everyone, it was like such a breath of fresh air. Everyone liked Lama Yeshe so much because he was talking about bodhicitta. But Lama Zopa Rinpoche, he says, that was useful. His job, right? Remember we were saying, I shared that quotation by Songso Khyentse Rinpoche. The problem with lamas today, they're so focused on giving the students what they want rather than giving them what they need. I wish we were all liberated. If we're all liberated, I wouldn't have to talk about this. It's not like I have some joy, talking about suffering. I have general joy, but there's no, it's like, I like talking about this. I can talk about other things. Okay, anyway. So 8 types of suffering. These first 4, right? Birth, old age, sickness, and death. This I think we know. The suffering of encountering what is unpleasant. This we also know. Separation from what is pleasant. And of not getting what you want. So these 3, I think, are quite nice together, right? So most of the time, right, I think about it like this. Most of the time, we make great effort in trying to get what we want, but we don't get it, okay? And instead of getting it, we actually are, with no effort whatsoever and no desire on our part, we're constantly encountering what is unpleasant, okay? Now, those very rare times when we make effort to try to get something that we want, what happens? Then we're separated from it. Okay. Yeah. So really, here in the different texts, some say, we need to get this feeling of disenchantment. Some say, weariness. So I kind of like that, weariness, to describe the feeling that should be arising as we meditate. I like to also say it's actually a little bit nauseous. We should feel nausea. Nauseous. like we want to vomit. Okay. So some people, it's like, yo, they, they think they come to a Buddhist meditation course. I want to get some peace. Oh yeah, I heard meditation is very peaceful. Then they get hit with all this stuff. They feel like they want to vomit. They're like, what? What did I sign up for? But you see, again, right? There's not just that, on an exam later, there's a question, what are the 6 types of suffering, 8 types of suffering, 3 types of suffering? We can write it out perfectly, right? It's not about that. We need all of this. Remember, the greatness of Lamrim is so that all the teachings appear as practice instructions, right? All the teachings are trying to induce a mental transformation, right? And the mental transformation we're going for here is to abandon the mind that is putting our hopes in samsara, right? Where we're like, hey, you know what? Yeah, I'm suffering, but you know what? Once I can pay off my credit card debt, get some money in the bank, put my down payment on the house, then I'll be okay. Or, oh, I'm suffering. Oh, yeah. Oh, it's because I'm lonely. But once I meet that special someone, then I'll be good. All that stuff we need to put to the side and have kind of the thought, you know what? As long as I'm bound by my karma and afflictions, I'm going to experience nothing but one kind of suffering or another. Therefore, I have to get out. I have to abandon these afflictions. Okay, that's what I got to do. Right? And then how are we going to do that? We're going to have in our meditations this nauseous feeling come up. That's good. Push through that. Otherwise, it's just, like they say, okay, in Tibet, it's my time. Okay. In Tibet, there's a lot of nomads, right? And so they have flocks of yak and whatever, and then they get butter, right? And so they would have leather kind of pouches to carry the butter to Lhasa or wherever. Okay, so there's this saying. Okay, normally, if you want to soften leather, you use butter. But those cases for the butter, they get so hardened, and then they've been in contact with butter so much that then the butter loses its effect to soften them. You understand? So there's this risk for us that we become like that. We hear these teachings. Okay, yeah, eight types of suffering. Okay, I can list them. I get 100 on my exam. Great. But then our mind becomes so hardened that we can't. We hear about these, but it doesn't affect us. We don't get that nausea. Then very difficult, actually. It's like, the antibiotics, they lose their effectiveness, or, we get, antibiotic resistant bacteria coming. Then our afflictions, we run the risk of our afflictions becoming Lamrim resistant. Okay, so anyway, so of these 8, yeah, the first 7 pretty okay. Again, we know what it means, but the 8th one actually is a little bit of talk we have to do, right? I think I went through this with you guys before, but just to review, right? So again, the suffering of the 5 appropriate aggregates, yeah, Nyelen Gipumpo. And then also good to add Zakche Nyelen Gipumpo. Zakche is contaminated appropriated aggregates. So again, don't want to just heap more terminology on you, but it's useful. And by the way, speaking of heap, sometimes you'll see this aggregate translated as heap, right? Pungpo, skanda. Pungpo in Tibetan, skanda in badly pronounced Sanskrit. Okay, so these aggregates, okay, just to demystify, it's just talking about the psychophysical constituents of a person, right? So there's 5. Zuk, or form, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness. Okay. So those are when we say constituents of a person, means based on the 5 aggregates, we label the person. Right. In a very rough way, we can think it's, just as the person is labeled on the body and mind, right? He is smart. Oh, she is tall, right? So those things, we say that she is tall because her body is tall, right? Then based on the consciousness of that person, we say he is smart. Okay. Or, many examples like that, right? You are sitting. Why? Because your body is sitting. Okay. So that's what I mean by the person is labeled on the aggregates, or those body and mind. So they're appropriated in the sense that they're taken on by persons born in samsara through karma and affliction, right? So remember, appropriated, we have like a, appropriate means like to take. And so persons born in samsara, they take on these aggregates. If we're not liberated in this life, then at our moment of death, then this consciousness, and we'll get into this in the 12 links, but a previously accumulated karmic disposition or imprint will ripen. That will project us into our next life. And so then us, the last moment of the I in this life, it'll take on the aggregates of the next life. So then this process, though, is thrown by karma and afflictions, right? So then what will happen? It'll be the basis of future suffering, there being in the nature of suffering. 5 appropriated aggregates. They're vessels for future suffering. Why? Because since we have, the afflictions now, we're constantly creating causes for more samsara. Suffering based on what presently exists. What does that mean? So the fact that we have this body now, that means we can get sick. That means, we will get hungry. All these other sufferings, right? Because we have this type of body. And then vessels for suffering of pain, change, and conditionality. We're going to talk about those in a minute. Yeah. Actually, it literally will be a minute, although, yeah, we only have 6 minutes left. Okay. So then that leads us into the 3 types of suffering. So suffering of pain, suffering of change, and the suffering of conditionality, or all pervasive compounded suffering. So then suffering of pain is, normally what we talk about is, right, like toothache, backache, headache. It can also be mental, right? So depression and so forth. But the things that normally are identified as suffering or pain in the world, someone untrained in philosophy, then those are suffering of pain. Suffering of change then is talking about, normally the main one we think of is contaminated samsaric happiness, right? So even something like eating a nice meal, right? There is some, the analogy or the example they give, right? Tibetan lamas often talk about momos, right? Momos, little dumplings It's kind of like dim sum, if you know the kind of Chinese equivalent. Dumplings. Come on, momos. Then, or maybe if you don't know, then French fries. Okay, something like this. You eat one. So yummy, so tasty. Then keep eating more and more, right? Then momos, I'm not sure, maybe 10. Okay, but then keep going. 15, 20. At some point, you'll get sick. Okay. So now it's a little, I don't know where people think this, but actually the point is, even from Momo number 1, that's suffering of change. Some people think, oh, no, yeah. Then when it becomes Momo 15 and you get a stomach ache, oh, that's the suffering of change. No, but Momo 15, when you get sick, that's suffering of pain, right? That's the first one. So the point is, Aryadeva, he says, okay, how we know that it is suffering, even the first Momo, is because, we, experience this switch, right? If it were true happiness, if it were a true source of pleasure, then the more the merrier. The more momos we eat, the more pleasure we would have. Since we don't see that, then that means even from the first one, it's suffering of change. Okay? It's in the nature of suffering. Then suffering of conditionality, all pervasive compounded suffering. That basically means is quite similar to this, just the suffering of appropriate aggregates. Means we have karma, we have the afflictions, we have all these imprints of karma, right? We haven't abandoned them. So everywhere in samsara, now there are places in the upper realms, the form and formless realm, where they don't have suffering of pain, they don't have suffering of change, but they haven't abandoned the afflictions. Therefore, they're going to take again another rebirth, right? So this one is the real important one. The fact that we haven't abandoned the afflictions means we're going to, take rebirth within samsara endlessly. This is what we talked about at the beginning. This is the endless process, beginningless and endless, because the afflictions haven't been abandoned. Okay, so actually it's only 2 more minutes. So I had a little question. Okay, we were talking, and then okay. Yeah, I'm going to give you my questions. If you have questions, then could I ask, you can send them into Mary Ellen. And since I've shortchanged you an hour, if need be, I can do like a little, Q&A based on your questions sometime in the week. Okay. All right. But here's my question for you. So remember, I'm always emphasizing this, the paths shared with the medium scope versus the actual path, right? This we've talked about many times, right? So then I'm wondering, then, yeah, we did say there are some, many of the practices are shared with a medium scope, but there's some that are not. Okay, so I want you to all be a little bit more precise in identifying what is not shared, an unshared path. Okay, and to give you kind of what I mean, I'm really interested. I want you to think about, so these bodhisattvas or aspiring bodhisattvas, right? We're all studying the middle scope. Okay. Then we have this quotation from Shantideva. If those beings have never before even dreamt of such an attitude for their own sake, how would it arise for the sake of others? This is showing why a bodhisattva needs to train in the, mind of renunciation. Okay. So if those beings, right, means if we have never dreamt of such an attitude of what? Getting liberation from samsara, So if you don't even think about that for your own sake, how could you arise for the sake of others? Means how could you then wish for others to be free from samsara? Right? Then there's this from 3 principles of the path. When having trained in that way, there's no arising even for a second for the attractions of fraction of cyclic existence, and all day and night, the intention seeking liberation arises, then thought of renunciation has been generated. So this seeking liberation, okay, does that mean a practitioner has to generate this mind of full-fledged renunciation before they generate bodhicitta? If so, this is the point. Just as we were saying that bodhicitta is the kind of gateway to the Mahayana, right? When you have bodhicitta, then you enter the Mahayana path. Similarly, these Shravakas, the people in the Hinayana path, the middle scope, once they generate the thought of renunciation, that's their entry into the middle path, right? So now, if we say that, even bodhisattvas, they need the full-fledged mind of renunciation before they generate bodhicitta, then does that then mean they enter the Shravaka path first? So this is not, actually there's many texts that say, no, there's these beings who just from the beginning, they enter the Mahayana. They don't enter the Shravaka path first. So you see the two potential conflict? If we say bodhisattvas need to train in the mind of renunciation before they generate bodhicitta, like it's a prerequisite, then do they enter the path? If they don't enter the path, then do they not have this mind of no attraction and all day and night the attention seeking liberation? Do they not have that here in this? You understand? We're out of time. But those two things. What do they need? Right? They're training in the mind of path shared with the middle scope practitioner. Right? We're trying to get this mind of renunciation. So what do they want? And be very specific when we think about these things. Do they then wish, I don't want to take rebirth again in samsara? Does a bodhisattva, aspiring bodhisattva, have that thought? Do they wish to, abandon the afflictions? Right? I'm not seeing a lot of nodding. I'm not sure I made myself clear, but anyway, we're out of time. The point is here, paths shared with the medium scope versus the actual medium scope. Okay, so I want you to think as we go through these, what a bodhisattva is actually generating and what they do not generate. Remember, they don't generate, I must achieve liberation for myself alone, right? But short of that, what do they think about? Okay, we're out of time, thank you, Mary Ellen. Okay, so let's leave it at that. People on the East Coast, right? At midnight, they turn into a pumpkin. So, do a brief dedication. May whatever virtue I have collected benefit the teaching and all transmigratory beings, and especially may it cause the essence of perfect pure loss Androkpa's teachings to shine forever. Okay, so thank you very much. And yeah, please, if you have questions regarding this week's material, you can send to Mary Ellen and I'll follow up in some format. Otherwise, namaste. See you next time.
Thank you so much for making time for us today.
Thank you very much, John.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Johnson.
Okay. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you.
Have a good night.